Welcome back. We're going to be talking about spirituality and what IFS can offer spiritual seekers. When I think of spirituality, I think of a connectedness to universal consciousness, to the higher being inside and outside of us and in all living things. This chapter is called This Changes Everything, and it offers a big shift in how we identify. So we'll get into that. And we also go back over unburdening, healing our parts. And this unburdening allows that connection to our highest self, to other people, to the planet, to everything. So it's a big one. Let's get into it. And we'll talk about how this shift in identity happens. I'm going to be drawing for you today to illustrate this summary of this chapter, literally illustrate. So I hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully this resonates. So let's talk about IFS and spirituality and connectedness, and then we will make some art at the end too. So here we go. So here I have a sun as the self. We have parts as these blue clouds and burden parts as these storm clouds. First of all, in this chapter, they talk about burden parts as being very disconnected from self or not being able to hear self. Often these burden parts are dealing with extreme impulses. So there's the barrier there, a disconnect. And parts long to connect with self. There are parallels that he makes between the inner and outer worlds, parts wandering around feeling disconnected from self and from each other and from us. So that unburdening reconnects those parts to us, to self, and to other parts inside. We lovingly ask them to open space. And this is how self can be let in and begin to develop that relationship of trust. So when we do that unburdening and we let self shine onto these burden parts and they can meet each other, develop that relationship, build trust. So there's a reconnection happening there. And that is an immediate transformation for these burden parts. To be seen by self, to be able to see self, to be able to connect to self. Not only when parts are unburdened do they completely transform, but also they now have much more connection and trust for self. So that connection and trust for the self is the second goal of IFS. And not only does this healing help us feel better, but it also connects us to what he's calling our big self. You could call God or universe. In this chapter, he also talks about parts having parts and parts actually having a self also. So he's seeing this like Russian doll situation of parts within parts and each part having its own self. So therefore, all parts are worthy of unburdening, being sacred beings worthy of love and compassion from self, and parts even containing self as well, treating parts with compassion, curiosity, and care. And I think this overall theme of no bad parts is such radical acceptance of who you are in every single part of you. Accepting every part of yourself is so profound and leads us to seeing yourself. It's an identity shift. So now you're seeing yourself as self. So you're seeing you as this highest version of yourself. They're calling it self. So if that's confusing, I see myself as self. So I see myself as, I could call it my inner being. the highest form of me. When I identify as that, then that's what changes everything. That identity shift connects me to, well, my highest self, but it also connects me to other people, and it connects me to the planet. It connects me to not just other people, but their highest self. So it makes it easier to recognize the self in others, the inner being in others. So that big shift is what a lot of other, practices or people call awakening or enlightenment, is in viewing yourself as, your inner being, your higher self, and not as your parts or your burdened parts that may need healing, which is okay. And accepting those parts, if you're coming at them from your highest form, your highest inner being, then those parts you can see with compassion and worthiness and acceptance. So that's such an amazing thing to heal these inner parts of yourself, maybe past versions of you. And we talked about that last time. Can be an inner child, but it also could be a protector. Just getting to know these parts of yourself is starting that process of healing and building the relationship between your higher self and your parts. So if we start to say, I am self, we get connected to whatever you want to call God. They're calling it the big self in the book. You could call it God or universe, or I like to think of it as like a universal consciousness where you can see the good in everyone and every living being. And that just happens when we open that space. We lovingly ask our parts to open space and let that light shine in and do some healing. I have an art piece for you that will have to do with connection, because I feel like connection is what it's all about. For the art portion of this, my interpretation of all of this information, my idea was to take one line continuously to thread, because I'm working with this concept of connection, to thread everything together. So I decided on making a collograph, which is a type of printmaking. I used hemp wick to glue my image to a plate. I was starting by thinking about what things in my life help me to feel that connection to my highest self, my divine self. And I started with my dog. I've always had a really great connection with animals, and mostly dogs. When my dog and I are cuddling, it helps me feel calm and more connected. And then I put in a baby, and just thinking about my role as a mother and my kids and loving on my kids, and how that helps me feel connected too. And then it ended up becoming a family portrait. I also have elements of nature in there because that's such a big connector for me. When I'm in nature, I feel so much more connected. And then thinking about this whole concept of bringing my highest self to these people that are so important to me. So it did become a family portrait, and it is one continuous line. So you see, like, the line goes through, and even if it's not one string, I would just continue the line with a new string if I had to add something. You can keep it simpler if you want to. And then I rolled ink and over it and printed, and this is one of my favorite prints. So it's more abstract, and I like that about it. It's just that one continuous contour line of my family. So you can use whatever subject matter speaks to you. This will be fun. So I actually used, this is hemp wick because it can really hold its shape. You pinch it, it keeps that point. You can twist it and do all kinds of things and it will keep its shape. But you could use string or yarn. And if you do not have hemp wick or you don't want to buy it, you can just do a drawing in pencil, trace it in your glue little by little and add the string, and then that might be an even faster process. But that's just not how I roll. I make things complicated, but I am happy with the way it turned out because I do love fiddling and playing, so you can see me here just going crazy with it. And this was my first attempt at, here's the baby face, and right before that I'm doing my face, and then I'm looking at this flower in nature. Didn't keep that, but I thought it was nice to show it as like I could have kept it simple, but I didn't because that's not how I do. And then here's the leaf, and I wanted to show this too because it's fall, my favorite season, and because it shows really great example of how this hemp wick will keep its shape. And then I thought, I'm gonna kiss this baby to show that love. I feel like love is it. Love is the divine. When we are loving authentically, that is the most divine thing we can do in this life. So go deep. So anyway, I was playing around with the face a lot more than I'm showing you here. Because I didn't want to, go too crazy, but these shifting faces are just so perfect for IFS to represent all the different parts of ourselves. My tacky glue looks crazy dark because I stuck a piece of the hanger in there. And it got rusty. But by the time I do, this is my husband's face. By the time I'm gluing him down, the glue is kind of normal again. And it doesn't even matter with this because we're going to be rolling paint over it. And here I'm zooming in. I'm using a stylus. You could use a chopstick if you don't have a stylus or whatever, popsicle stick. Rolling the string onto the glue. Next, we will do a Mod Podge seal. So literally just painting Mod Podge everywhere. A nice coating all over, even on the in-between parts, but yes, also on the string, just to seal it up. I used watercolor paper for the plate, but you could definitely use cardboard. That might be even better. I took it outside to dry because it was so stinky. My Mod Podge, I don't know if it's because it's the bottom of my bottle, but it stank. So I took it outside, hung it on the screen door, and it was a beautiful day, so I could. And once it was glossy and dry, I was ready for printing. So I had acrylic paints, rollers, brushes, and I found some block printing ink that I wanted to play with. And you can brush on different colors. You can roll on one color. It's up to you. If you're brushing it on, you have to be super duper fast brushing the color because otherwise it dries out too fast and you won't see anything when you lay down your paper to print. When you are printing, since we're not using a printing press, you need to use your fingers and you can really rub all around all those details so that you can get them to transfer. My best print was when I wet my paper first. This is that print. It looked much better than other prints on the white paper when I did that, when I wet my paper first. And then I laid on some of this white acrylic paint thick, and it blended with that turquoise, and I did that on this black paper, and that was my print I showed you earlier. It's just one of my favorites. It's so crisp and nice, and I do want to go back to the printing board and use some darker colors on the lighter paper because I think that will work out better. But this was so much fun. I hope you enjoyed watching this process, and I hope you give it a try also. Thanks for watching. I'm so happy you joined me today. Hit that subscribe and like buttons, hit those buttons, and for more artistic interpretation of, well, right now it's IFS, but I plan to go into other modalities as well. And next time I will be using the exercise from the same chapter called the Dilemma Meditation. And there's another exercise in there as well, so I'm not sure if there'll be 2 different videos or just one with art interpretations. So stay tuned. Can't wait to see you again. So grateful for you.